And we're good to go. So, hello everybody, welcome to the World of Podcast, episode 4, with a very special guest, Frank Klepacki. Hello, Frank.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So, let's talk briefly about your new album. It's Quarantine Sessions, right?
Yeah.
So,
Not
so
the most original title, but it was fitting considering the circumstances.
yeah, I mean, it's obvious that it's like I think it's a mix of jam sessions you made through the quarantine.
Yeah, actually, I'll talk a little bit about that. So once the pandemic was making its way in, and we all were on lockdown basically, you know, couldn't go many places for a while. We've never seen anything like that in our lifetime, and so it was interesting. And I felt like, okay, so now we're all working from home. I'm just in the studio all the time. A large part of what I do is touring and playing with different bands. So that was all halted. And so therefore all the free time that I had, instead of doing that, I just spent, trying to figure out projects to do in the studio. And the first thing that came to mind was, okay, we're faced with this coronavirus. And I have an old song from my first solo album called Virus. So I thought it would be kind of funny to do a new version of that and record that, like for modern day kind of a thing, and have me playing all the instruments on it. And I'm gonna release a video of that actually, because I recorded video of myself tracking and just kind of having some fun with it. So that kind of kicked off the idea, and from there, I started diving into other favorite songs of mine in my catalog and said, maybe if I applied that same kind of, modern update to these tracks, just to kind of reimagine them, that might be kind of a fun experiment, to do. And so then I kept on that path. I originally thought I might do a 4 or 5 song EP, and then it turned into a whole album. So over the course
Yeah,
of the last year, that's what it turned out to be.
yeah, that sounds like it's a like everything comes together with quarantine. And I presume there was a lot of Zoom jam sessions. Is that is
N-
that a thing?
Not really. No, not really. Most of the time I was just recording and working on things here. And of course I was doing a bit of video filming and stuff along the way, just so I could gather some assets for later whenever I would want to release some videos, which will be in the near future. Excuse me. So that was really all I did. I didn't do a lot of Zoom stuff. I did a lot of Zoom meetings though, because part of working on video games, since we're all working from home, we're always on, virtual meetings with each other every day. And so just trying to keep the team, in communication all the time, so that,
Yeah.
we all know what we're working on, and can, get things solved quickly and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Speaking of video games, it is now 26 years, huh? 26 years since
Since
the
Command and Conquer came out.
the dawn of Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
how
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
yeah, how do you see like all of these years and it's still like, especially with the remaster, which you have revisited the whole universe and the music once again.
Yeah, that was a very surreal experience. When we first started working on that project, um, I kind of was of the mindset that something must be in the stars lining up things in the universe, because there was quite a few things around Command and Conquer that were happening independently of each other, but all at the same time. So let me give you an example. Before the remasters were even considered, I was already planning on doing that concert that made its way online at Magfest with the Tiberian Sons, and doing the
Yes.
best of music Command and Conquer live. So that was already something I was planning to do. So with that in the works, the middle of that year, which would be 2018, is when we got uh, called, to Petroglyph, got called to meet with EA and do potentially, you know, start working on the remasters. And so that all, of course, worked out, and we started working on it. And I'm just like, how funny is this? I'm already like doing a live show, and now we're working on the game, the remaster of the game 25 years later. And what was funny was independent even of that, the next game developers conference that was coming up in 2019 also was going to feature a post-mortem on Command and Conquer, and I got asked to be part of that too. So and they didn't even know we were working on the remaster, so all of these things were just like in line with each other, so it was kind of funny.
Yeah, that's nice.
But yeah, it was really to get back to working on it and starting to work on it. It was a surreal experience because now I'm going back in time 25 years ago to remember what my mindset was and what I was thinking when I was working on all this. And all these memories just started coming back of, like, you know, the team and interactions we had and conversations we had and decisions that were made and why. And now I'm going through all of this audio literally with a fine-tooth comb, detailing all of the sound effects, all of the voice, you know, and cleaning it up and trying to make it, you know, sound better for today's, you know, systems
Standards,
and today's quality. Yeah. So yeah, that was interesting. And there were some, while I was fortunate enough to have the majority of the final mixes of the game in high quality before they were, you know, downsampled for that time period, I was able to utilize all of that and remaster that from the source. But there was a handful of tracks that I actually had to recreate from scratch because I could not find them.
Oh man, yeah, I can imagine.
And so I was just like, all right, I need to go and find the exact instruments, or at least as close as possible, to really truly replicate these to sound like they were identical. And I was fortunate enough to be able to really pull that off because I kept a lot of my old gear from the 90s. To backtrack a bit, when I was in Westwood in the 90s, I mirrored my office studio with my home studio. So I literally bought all the same gear so that I could have them be interchangeable. If I came up with some good ideas at home, I would bring them into work and I'd be able to just load them up and be able to work on them right away because it was the same exact instruments. So thankfully I held on to that stuff so I could go back and actually find the original instrumentation and the original synths that I had used for the most part. There might've been a couple of substitutions that were super close, but maybe not quite exact, but, you know, close enough that no one would really notice the difference. And yeah, so that was a challenge, but fortunately I was able to do that. So yeah, it was a fun experience.
Yeah,
overall.
I mean, while playing the game, when there's an option to choose from the original music to the remake, and you can hear like the difference. It's like the original recording almost sounds like mono because that's
it
like,
is.
yeah, that's 90s, you know, Windows 95 technology.
Well, there was a reason for that though, and that was to fit it all on the disc. CDs
Oh
are
yeah,
what games came out in at the time. And as you know, if you have full quality, you know, uncompressed audio on a CD, well, you can probably fit about 12 songs or so on an actual compact disc before, you know, it eats up the entire thing. We're putting an entire game on there with video and all of this. So everything gets compressed so that everything fits. So that's really the whole reason that was done back then. And that was before MP3 technology came into play. So we could, you know, have a better sound with, you know, even less space with MP3 when that came around. But before that, we had to do it in WAV files. So we had to go down to 22K and make a mono.
22K and mono. Oh man, that's like
yeah. Crazy to think about nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I work with the sounds, and I can imagine like the differences in quality. But yeah, and so after Command and Conquer Tiberian, then you started maybe in the same year working on Red Alert 1. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how was like how were your approach, or what was your expectations that like directly after CNC1, like this whole new project Red Alert 2 came to be?
So
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm in Red Alert 1.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's fine. So when after CNC was finished, my assumption was that we would be moving into a sequel. I heard they were going to make another game after that because of the success and all of that. So I was like, okay. So I started thinking immediately about what the sequel would be, which obviously was much later with Tiberian Sun. Um, I didn't know that at the time. So I started coming up with ideas musically for what I thought, might be cool for a sequel. And one of the first themes, of course, that I had written for that was Hell March. So the president of the company, Brett Sperry, at the time, he was like, he liked to be very involved in the creative process, and he would go around to all the departments and just kind of see what people were working on, and hey, what's new, what do you got to show me, kind of a thing, just because he's a visionary and wanted to just kind of be part of everything. So he would frequently stop by the audio department and and check out what we were up to, and he asked if I had anything new idea wise for what would be the new CNC, and I was like, yeah, I've got a few ideas, and I just came up with this tune. I played him Hell March, and he just went, wow. He's like, that's the theme song for the next game. And I'm like, really?
Okay.
And he said, yeah. He says, but just so you know, it's not actually a sequel. It's going to be a prequel, and we're going to go and have this whole alternate timeline to the
Soviet times, and
yeah, all of that. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So number one, I didn't know that, but number two, you think this is the theme song for that game. That's pretty amazing. So, and it worked out great. I unknowingly, I wrote that theme with the faction of Nod in mind, actually, because I thought it would be a
wow.
badass,
Yeah.
theme for that kind of attitude. But as it turned out, ended up being the theme song for Red Alert.
Oh, that's something new. Like it's so Hellmarch was originally for like your imagination of the next CNC, but it turned out to be the theme for the Soviets in Red Alert.
Yeah, well, just the theme for the overall game, really.
Yeah, but again, it fits, and it's went on to 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It became sort of an iconic thing, and completely by accident, because when I was writing it, I didn't ever think that it would be that much of a have that much resonance with the fan base. I just figured it was a cool, badass tune to throw in there, but I didn't have any notion that it would be the main theme of the game, or that people would love it so much overall, and it would just have this lasting effect on even future generations, where like it turned into a meme for everything later.
Yeah,
like that.
There was a time.
If something turns into a meme for multiple things, then you've got something special, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the signs.
But after finding that out, after finding out what the game was actually going to be, then it made me start thinking about, okay, well, how should I approach the rest of the soundtrack then? Because this changes the way I'm thinking about things for the game. And it was decided, really, when we had a meeting about it, that they wanted to keep the vibe of what I'd created in the previous CNC and just kind of push it forward, even in this game. Even though it takes place in the past, they still wanted that edgy music.
Yeah.
And if anything, they wanted me to kind of refine it a little bit more, and make it a bit more industrial, or make it just more of the synth stuff, but give it a personality that is more cohesive this time around, because CNC, the very first one, was all over the place musically. It had every type of genre thrown at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and that was because I was encouraged to experiment with that game. They actually wanted me to try everything and see what would work. So I did, with the assumption that maybe not everything would make it in the game, but as it turned out, they threw most of it in and liked it. So I was like, okay, well, if you say so, cool, and so when Red Alert came around, it was more of it definitely was intended to be more of a cohesive sound for the overall game, and then push that forward in the CNC universe.
Yeah, I mean, all of my memories in playing CNC1 is like, you have this track, Act on Instincts. It sounds like, okay, it's related to the game, but when the next tracks comes in, it's like, this is not it's not like it's made for a war game, for a strategy like RTS. But yeah, that makes sense. And then when you said the industrial theme, I think in Tiberian Sun, it's one of the most industrial maybe music you made, 1999.
It had some different elements for sure. It was meant to, Tiberian Sun was kind of another curveball that was thrown at me, because when we got to working on Tiberian Sun, I knew that was for sure going to be the proper sequel to CNC. So I started doing some stuff that was more in line with, you know, from the original game, and trying to push that attitude forward as well. And after I got through my first few musical ideas for that, then they kind of came back and said, well, you know, what we really want to do is make this more of an apocalyptic vibe and more moody and more ambient, and, you know, kind of go that direction instead of this, you know, aggressive, you know, stuff that, you know, we're used to hearing. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now I got to rethink everything for that game. So,
Yeah.
And at the time I was pretty spread thin because I was working on 2 other projects at the same time.
Is Blade Runner,
So,
right?
huh?
Blade Runner?
No, I don't know that I was working on Blade Runner at the same time. I think it was definitely one of the Lands of Lore games, and maybe Nox.
Oh,
But yeah, I remember I had a lot on my plate, and I was just like racking my head against the wall. Oh, how am I going to finish this game? Finish the soundtrack now that they've thrown me a curveball, and now I have to start over basically. So I called in a friend of mine to see if it would work out for us to maybe collaborate, and that was my friend Jared Mendelson. And he, they liked what they heard from him, and so so we kind of split up the soundtrack for Tiberian Sun. But we did collaborate together on a few tracks in the same room, and actually wrote everything together in that capacity. So that was actually the most fun experience I kind of had on that game, because I liked the energy and how we were bouncing ideas off of each other, and making some unique stuff and I felt that it did sound different enough from the other games that this would probably be more of, you know, what they were looking for in terms of the ambient and different sound. So so yeah, that worked out good. There are, yeah, quite a bit of industrial like sounds that we incorporated for sure, and that came from taking what I'd done previously, and kind of putting it in more of the apocalyptic setting, and how would that sound if we tried to make that work. So that's really where that came from.
okay. Let's go a little before. I think Blade Runner was in 1997, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's the story of, you know, because I've heard the music of Blade Runner, and it's some of the tracks in the game, and the soundtrack of the game was like covers of the original release.
Yes. Yes.
And how was like your approach to like recreate everything?
So that came from the fact that when we were working on the game, first of all, I was a huge fan of that movie and score already.
Same.
Like before we even got to work on the game. So I was like so excited to see how we would make this, you know, adventure game from it. But I was also very nervous because I knew that you know, even though we're doing a video game interpretation, that you know, fans would expect this to feel like the film that they know, you know, at least in some degree, you know, at least the environment, let it, you know, just that feeling. It's an emotional connection you have. Yes. You know, there's, and for me, the music is half of that, because while the film's visuals and story is compelling, the music is the emotion of that film to
exactly.
me. And it's really the emotion of any film, if you think about it. I mean, because that's what moves us. That's what, you know, makes us feel something more than what we're watching. And Vangelis's stuff is super amazing to me, because this guy's just a musical genius. I mean,
he is.
I can't hold a candle to his creation. So, and I know this going in, but I'm gonna give it my best shot, you know, is what I'm thinking. And when they said that we could use key themes from the film in the game, I was like, okay, great. So can I just, you know, take these off of the CD and put them in? And they're like, no, because we have a licensing issue where we can use the compositions, but we can't use the recordings. And I'm like, well, okay, well, what am I supposed to do then?
I mean, you know that the soundtrack of Blade Runner on itself, it has many issues even before its release. It's one.
I know.
it has a very. I'm writing. I'm making a documentary about the history of the Blade Runner music, and day after day, I realize that it's one of the most complicated and releases of music in all time. Like,
Yeah, I don't know why that is or why that happened that way, but for whatever reason, yeah, there's like, the mechanical license versus the rights licensing. They're all like different and separate from each other for some reason, and so that's what makes everything complicated. So anyhow, I was like, okay, well, if we can use the music and I have to recreate it, that's what I'm going to have to do. And of course, there's no sheet music to go by, other than people who have transcribed it themselves and not from the official source. And so, and then there's the issue of how do I get the sound of this nailed, like, because there's certain synthesizers that were used and this, expressive way that he played everything that is, it transcends what synthesizers can do. All right. This is where the human being behind the magic is so important, because the way that he played everything and performed everything had so much expression in that itself that the synth sound is almost auxiliary to that.
yeah,
That's just the sound that's being used, but it's about the person performing it. So that was a big part of it too. So I have all of this to take into account while I'm recreating his score with modern technology, using a DAW and trying to find sounds and trying to nail the melodies and the way the expression is being utilized in the synthesizer sounds. That took me a long time to recreate his key themes there. But
it's mostly the CS80.
yeah.
Even by modern standards, I think it's still kind of difficult. Even with the new technology, the new DAWs, the new VST, it's still difficult to recreate the how Vangelis was using all of these instruments, especially on the CS80.
This is something a lot of younger up and coming composers and whatnot don't like to hear, but you have to be a skilled musician. Okay, if you want to get close to that, you have to be a skilled musician. It's, you can compose brilliant stuff all day long, but to pull that sound and that expression off, you have to play it. There's no other way to do it. So that just takes time and practice and a lot of dedication to your craft and your instrument. And I'll be the first to admit, I am nowhere near Vangelis in terms of being able to play a keyboard. Like that's I can barely get across the ideas that I really want to. I'm competent, but not to that level.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos of Vangelis when he plays on the keyboards. He has like these racks of keyboards and he plays all of them at the same time.
Oh yeah.
He even uses his feet. So you have like all of these keyboards, and he has been a pianist since he was like 4 years old. So his fingers are like the maximum level of performance.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's somebody who dedicated themselves to their craft, and from that young age, that's an advantage too. The younger you start, the more of an advantage you'll have in your later years if you really dedicate yourself. Exactly. If you really have that passion and that drive to excel at something. Having a great skill is very important. For me, my dedication actually is the drums. That's what I started very young at. So I started playing when I was about 8, and by the time I was 11, I was able to perform professionally.
Oh,
so that was number one for me, and still is. I mean, if you were to ask me right now to join a band playing any instrument, I would tell you, well, make me the drummer, because that's what I'm best at in my arsenal of instruments. Am I competent at everything else? Yes, but I'm not as skilled or as great, as somebody who is a dedicated, guitarist or dedicated keyboardist. So, but it's one of those things where when you're a composer and you have an understanding of multiple instruments, that's an advantage too. So because that's what my primary career has been in most of my life, that's been advantageous to me because I understand how a guitar is played. I understand how the bass is played. I understand how a keyboard is played. I understand how the orchestra instruments are played because I've worked with enough of them over the years to know how to write for them or how not to write for them. And, uh, and having rhythmic background on the drums to start with was an advantage because that informs how I write, actually. So if you listen to a lot of my music, it's very rhythmic. Even what I'm playing on keys or what I'm playing on guitar, it's very rhythm based because I'm a drummer first.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, it's kind of news to me that you are the first you're a drummer and then you're like a performer or composer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of the like the drums I hear in the CNC games were all your performances, like actual.
Not necessarily, but I programmed them if I wasn't performing them.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the early stuff was still utilizing, drum samples or programmed beats, or because a lot of times what I would do is I would try to create, an overly exaggerated sound, whether it was industrial or whether it was, just overproduced, because I would take drum kit sounds on the keyboard and then mix them with textures of like other drum loops or other sounds, clanks or whatever,
Yeah.
and just try to make this sort of rhythmic bed of those sounds. And I love a lot of synthesizer music, and I love a lot of programmed music, especially out of the 80s. There was a lot of great stuff that I gravitated towards that made me want to pursue those kind of sounds. So even though I can play that stuff live, there is something to be said for intentionally choosing very specific sounds that are samples or triggers or whatever.
Have you tried like recording your own sounds, percussive sounds?
Yeah. In fact, there's a VST out there that I produced called Shreddage Drums. It's made by Impact Soundworks, and when they wanted to do a live drum kit sound that was kind of geared towards rock and metal and that sort of thing, I was fortunate enough to get asked to help them do that. So I recorded everything and produced it here in the studio and provided all of the samples and all of the velocities and all of the expression and the way that it's hit and everything, and a variety of different drums and sizes, and handed that off to them, and they created something really great in terms of how they programmed it, and it's very usable. So it's kind of funny because when I use that VST, it's like I hear my own drums, and I know that that's what I would record if I was doing it. So it's kind of fun to be able to use that as a mock-up before I go and play something.
Yeah, that's nice. I would
Yeah.
like to make my own instruments in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's a fun thing.
I've been trying to make my own synthesizers. Like I have these small circuits. It's always fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever played around with like the Reactor program in Native Instruments.
I did only once, but on my friend's behalf because I don't have anything from. I mean, I still to get contact. I still don't have contact, but I tried
Oh man,
Reactor. I think it's the possibilities are endless in Reactor.
they are. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
tinker with it to your heart's content until you get something
exactly.
that you think starts sounding cool. I don't have the patience for that sort of thing, so I will often just utilize synths that other people have developed and or download patches, and or I'll tweak some patches myself too to an extent, to get more of a sound that I want. But I like to have something to start with as a foundation that I like first, because when you're working all the time in the studio and doing different stuff for clients, I mean, you got to move quickly and you got to meet deadlines. So I would rather have sounds available to me that are close to what I want to start with and go from there, rather than spend all day tweaking something.
Yeah, making your own presets can take a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. So after Tiberian Sun, there was Renegade, if I'm correct,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and let's say the CNC series. And your last project with EA was Red Alert 2?
No, we did. Renegade actually was one of the last ones. Earth and Beyond, I think, was the last one we did. And actually, we did start working on Command and Conquer 3 before
Really?
before we were consolidated. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's ironic. I was playing CNC3 with my friend maybe 6 hours ago, and
Mm.
I want to talk about the music. Uh, so you didn't make the music for CNC3. Why is that?
Well, because we had just started on it before we were consolidated, so a lot of it was just demo ideas and stuff. And once it, once it changed hands, then it changed direction. So it was kind of like, fresh start over. When EA kind of took it over. So that's really the only reason. And then after that, yeah, I was freelancing for a while, and then Petroglyph formed, and then I started, I joined them, and we started working on Star Wars: Empire at War.
So the EA thing, like buying Westwood, it also affected not only the games but also like you being part of the CNC universe.
Yeah, well, it's just how the business goes. I mean, when you make large corporate decisions like that, I mean, especially when you're gonna take a few different companies and consolidate them into one bigger building in a different location, then that affects,
Everything,
everybody
yeah.
everybody's lives, in terms of what their choices are. Like, I didn't care to move from where I was, so decided to stay put and take my chances freelancing. um, and then once all of that happens, there's quite a bit of time that it takes for that to be realized, and then you're waiting to hear anything from people you have contact with there. So like, I was open to still working on stuff, but it was just timing. The timing wasn't right, and by the time I knew that they were moving forward with CNC3, I was already working on another project with Petroglyph. So it's just kind of how it happened.
Yeah, that's kind of a sad departure,
Well, it's just one of those things where life
Goes on.
life throws you some curveballs, and you gotta do what's
But
best for you.
but we can all agree that the music for the original CNC, I mean, with the Tiberian Sons and with the concerts, and it's it lived through the years, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely, the CNC community has really stuck together this whole time, and it amazes me to know that has still got a strong base like that. It's one thing to have some nostalgia and go, oh yeah, that was, great games, great memories, and all of that. And but think about how much time has passed now. I mean, we're talking 25 years later, and that has not left those core people that loved it so much, and even into their adulthood, they still are part of the community, or part of modding stuff, or or just still have such a love for the games that they'll buy the next one that comes out. So the
Except
fact that
that there won't be a next one, at least after the disaster of Generals 2. Do you remember?
no, I didn't follow that
So so in 2011, and late, it's almost 10 years ago. I still remember. In 2011, the EA announced that they're going to release Generals 2. And Generals was kind of the flagship of the EA in the terms of RTS. And in 2011, they said it's going to be released in 2013. So in 2013, the open beta came out, and the first disappointing thing that it's free to play. The second thing that it's only multiplayer, and maybe 2 months after like open beta, the game just canceled, and that was the last time we heard anything about CNC. Except for 2 years ago, there was this mobile game, that CNC mobile game that we
Oh yeah.
don't talk about.
Yeah. No, I remember when that came out too. Yeah, it's just I think it was just something that that was really what I think helped the remaster project, because yeah, when Rivals came out, even though it was good for a mobile title, it
Yes,
wasn't the game that the community really wanted.
once, yes.
They wanted something back on the PC and revisit that. They wanted to be more excited about revisiting that again. So then that made even more sense for us to do the remaster. So we got to reinvigorate those original titles, bring people back to the memories that they cherished, and do it in a way that presented it with the highest quality standard that we could. And I think really that was the most endearing part of it. It was nice for us to be able to literally say, here's everything we've got. You know, like here's all the stuff we were able to dig up along the way, like all these old development photos and, you know, behind the scenes stuff and all of the old B-roll of the video takes and even some, you know, additional unreleased music that I found, you know, that that didn't get put into the games, and I was able to include that as bonus as well. So
yeah. I understand.
and to hear it in full uncompressed, you know, remastered quality, you know, in the game and experience this in a fresh way, you know, that was really the coolest part of doing this in my mind.
I mean, I can prove that by like there's one time in mid 20, maybe late 2020, like I was playing the remaster and I was chatting with my friend, and I just left the game open and the music just, you know, from playlist to playlist to the other, because yeah, as you said, the sound quality is it's like it's crazy, because the original game was only like, let's see, CD 500 600 megabytes, and now the game is the file size is so large it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an interesting question. Do you have any insight, or can you tell us about a potential future project that relates to a new CNC remaster?
Not right now, no. Just we're at Petroglyph, you know, we're working on an unannounced thing right now, but it's nothing on the horizon as far as announcements with anything CNC related that I'm aware of. It's just we hope to, you know, do something in the future with that. I mean, because, you know, the remasters did do pretty well.
It kind of revived
Had a
the
great
CNC
response.
soul. Like the
Yeah, I
people
mean, there was
like
a lot of
finally
great
come together.
compliments. There was a lot of great compliments, you know, from online reviews and the fans. Everybody really felt like this was a great way to do a remaster. Like, as even in comparison to some others, like we were getting put up against other remasters that had come out, and they're like, this is like a great way to do the remaster. You know, everything that they put into this, you could tell, was done with passion and love, and that's really what it was about. It was very much respecting that as much as possible, you know, and while and we wanted to keep everything legacy as much as possible and make the quality of life improvements that made sense and that, you know, we were able to offer in terms of, you know, like I said, just raising the quality bar, you know, letting people experience it fresh, you know, and get the feeling of the original game while retaining some better quality.
Yeah, I mean the unreleased like bloopers with the videos and the films, and also the unreleased music. It's I mean, any remaster that could be done, it couldn't be done better than the CNC remastered.
Yeah,
And
thanks, man.
I mean, we still hope for like, if so, was this published by EA, the new CNC? Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, from what I heard from the fan base, that we don't mind if they take the same approach with, let's say, Tiberian Sun and Red Alert 2. It would be awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty much an instant reaction from most people as soon as it came out.
It was like it's like a light, a hope for
Yes,
maybe
yes. It's like,
CNC will come
please
back.
do this for Red Alert 2 and Tiberian Sun. So, you know, if the fan base keeps you know, pinging EA about that, then maybe they'll be inclined to do that in the near future.
Yeah, only time will tell. We don't know. And so after CNC 3, we have CNC 4, and that's pretty much it.
What was that? I didn't hear.
I mean, after CNC 3, we have Red Alert 3, and then we had CNC 4. I just realized. Yeah, there was only CNC 3, Kane's Wrath, and that's it.
No, but yeah, Red Alert 3 though, I did come back for and worked on the main themes for that with the other composers that were already involved. So that was kind of fun, you know, to be part of that. Did Hell March 3 and Grinder 2, and I did the Soviet theme for when they launched their super weapon thing, and And so, yeah, I would have liked to have been more a part of that, but I think they didn't realize that it was even a possibility to bring me back into it until a little bit later along. So they already had, guys in place to be doing the music. So, but that was all right. I mean, it was still a fun experience, and I was glad I still got to be part of it, and actually contributed a few tracks to the expansion, the Uprising.
The uprising, yeah, yeah. See, in Hell March, so since I was a kid, like I was like a toddler maybe,
Mm-hmm.
when I started to play CNC, there was this specific sound in order that there was this guy like shouting at the microphone. So what's the story of this like man shouting? Like how did you come? Who is this? Is this you?
No, no. So this has got like urban legend mythos all over it. It's been going on for years and years. And I've explained this, in the past too, but there was just some mixed signals that got, interpreted, differently, and so it took on a life of its own. Basically, here's what happened. When I first wrote the song, I already had that idea in my head as soon as I woke up in the morning that day to go to work. I was like, it would be cool to write a metal song to the sound of marching boots. So,
Yes.
so that I had that in my mind already. I get to work and I find, I just start digging through some of the sound effect libraries that we had available on CDs. So I'm thumbing through them, trying to find, the right sample. I'm like, oh, okay, here's a marching sample. So I sample that, and in that cluster of sounds, there was a commander yelling something, and it
Oh.
happened to be in the same rhythm of the marching that I set up. So I was
Yeah,
like,
it
oh,
was. Yeah.
so I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. I'll sample that too. So I put that in there, and I couldn't really make out really what he was saying. It just kind of sounded like he's just shouting a command of some kind, And
Yeah.
so I thought that was kind of cool because it sounds old, it sounds vintage, it sounds like it could have been from back then, the way the recording quality is. So I write the whole song to that, and I finished the song the same day, right? It just kind of flowed. And the first riff I played on the guitar was that first riff of the song. So it
Yeah.
just kind of, I was just kind of onto something and just channeled that. Anyhow, I didn't pay much mind to that in specifically. It was more about just getting the vibe of the track down and getting the point across. So of course later people started asking, what is that guy saying in there, man? That sounds cool. And I'm like,
It does sound cool.
let me listen real close and see if I can figure it out. And I was just listening over and over again, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, but it sounds like he says, "We want war, wake up." Like
Okay.
now I've shared that with even some of the fans, in the early years. And
Yeah.
they took that as gospel. They're like, oh, Frank said he says, "We want war, wake up." And so that became a thing that made circulation around the internet. I said, I think that's what it sounds like. I didn't say that's for sure definitive. So then I started getting responses back from, like CNC is also very popular, with German gamers. And a lot of them were saying, no, this actually sounds like it's German. And this is what it is. It's Die Waffen legt an, which means ready your weapons. Okay. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I didn't even think that it would be a foreign language, So, so then that made circulation, when I started sharing that, with people. And so, and I thought, why not, why not make it that, but once again, I can't say 100% for sure. I wasn't there to record the guy. I just sampled off of this disc,
Of the CD,
so,
yeah.
so then that made the rounds around the internet. Frank said he says Die Waffen legt an. His German fans agree that this is what he says. And so it's one of those things where like I wanted to know for sure too what it was at that point. I was just like, what could this possibly, really be, and if that's it, then cool, that works. That's an explanation, but is it the explanation? We don't know. So then later on, it finally got to a point where, everyone could not agree basically on what it could be. Nope, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to step back from this rumor mill and not instigate anything anymore. I'm just going to, say, look, I don't really definitively know. So unless you can find the guy and ask him yourself, then get back to me.
Oh, no,
You
no. I
know?
mean, this is one of the mysteries that won't be solved, I think.
Yeah. I couldn't say for sure. Now, because it's been also reported that, okay, well, since it's part of this marching sound collection, that maybe it's actually a sound or a command for them to march, so that makes sense too, but again, I don't know for sure. So
Yeah. But we all know that you actually was the voice actor for the units.
um yeah, I did some of the units, yeah.
And they even the style lived up to the later games, unit reporting, and especially on the commander. Yeah, it is iconic.
Yeah, the commando character became kind of a cult favorite, which again was kind of funny. I didn't expect that to be anything special either. It was just, we were just having fun. In the original CNC, it was so much like the Wild West. I mean, we were including everybody in the company really on stuff. They were in the videos, they were the voices. I mean, we did most of everything internally. We did hire some professional actors to be in the videos too, but for the most part, it was just kind of like flying by the seat of our pants. We were just, having fun making the game and just pulling everybody in and creating and having, just trying things out to see what would stick. When they asked me to try out for the commando, they said, we need this guy to be kind of a, rough, rugged, badass, and the first thing that I thought of was the famous wrestler at the time, Randy Savage, Macho Man Savage. He was, and
Yeah.
he did a lot of the, apart from wrestling, he did some commercials for different products, and like one of them was a Slim Jim. Like, little excitement, snap into a Slim Jim, So I started trying to imitate him originally. So I was just like, yeah, man, doing that whole over the top kind of, wrestler thing. And they're like, okay, that's a little bit too crazy. Like dial that back a bit, like just make your own voice, but more raspy. So then I just dialed it back and I got a present for you, and that became the commando.
Yeah, I can tell. And so let's drift away from CNC. I don't want this whole episode to be about CNC, but that's the only
Sure, yeah.
thing. That's the only thing about I know from your music, and I grew up with it. Yeah, and also my dad used to play CNC. It's like even in my country, CNC is kind of popular in the RTS genre. But let's talk about your post CNC days. Let's say up until now. What was your let's say games or movies or the stuff you did in your career?
Well, I mean, touching on a little bit of what I talked about earlier was after the Westwood years, when Petroglyph formed, the first thing that we started working on was Star Wars Empire at War, and that was a Star Wars RTS. And that was a dream project for me because I was a lifelong Star Wars fan. I love the movies. I grew up with those, and that was like one of my favorite things in the world. So I always used to say, forever, like, man, I would give anything to be involved in Star Wars. I don't care if I'm just like an what do you call it? A fill-in actor, like somebody in the background, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
extra, they call it extras, what they call that. Like, I don't care if I would be an extra or like, get somebody their coffee or something. Like, I would just love to be there and see that happening or, be involved in that somehow. Anyhow, so when they started, and I knew everything like the back of my hand with Star Wars, the sound effects, the voices, the music, of course, because I'm a huge John Williams fan.
Yeah.
And, that was something that I think I've subconsciously prepared myself for at some point to rise to that occasion. Even if I wasn't going to ever be involved in something Star Wars specific, I always aspired to that inspiration. And so when we got that project, I was just like, oh my God, this is like amazing. So, but here was an interesting thing about that for my mindset at the time. Because I'm a fan, first and foremost, I know exactly what a Star Wars fan would want from a game like this.
Yeah.
And so I thought about, what I was doing in that way the whole time. I didn't try to force my mark on it or my, stamp on it in any way. I tried to do what I thought I wanted to feel as a fan. So when I came to doing new music for the game, I said, okay, everything that John Williams does needs to be in this game first, where everything should line up. Like, I know where that music goes. I know what planet they're supposed to be on, or what ship battle that references, or what, character that's for, and all of that. So I made sure all of that was in place first. Then anything that was expanded on that, like expanded universe stuff, that we went to new planets that we never seen before, and introduced new characters for the game, that was where I knew I could put in something new that was from me, but still try to sound as much like Williams as possible. So I basically just did as best I could to impersonate the style, or the feeling at least, of what the Williams music evoked, and tried to just blend it in. I didn't try to make it stand out. I didn't try to, hey, here's what I did, kind of a thing. It was more like, no, if people don't notice, then that's better, because then it feels like it belongs there. It feels like it's naturally part of that universe. That was the goal. So that was a very different approach for me, working on, an IP of that stature, and something that I personally revere that much. I wanted to make sure I did it justice from the fan perspective. And the same thing with the sound effects and everything. I got to, put all the movie sounds in where they belonged, but then we had new vehicles or new weapons, or, other things that we could bring in. And I got to design sounds for that. And again, Ben Burt is the sound designer. He's one of my, all-time idols for sound design. So again, I'm trying to blend in, not stand out. I want it to sound like something that belongs in his arsenal of sound creation, rather than here's the thing that I did. Like, I was very conscious of that.
So when I compare your music with John Williams, we know that John Williams is more orchestra symphonic. How is that? I mean, I never heard the game's music. Was it electronic, or was it symphonic?
No, it was symphonic. Like I said, I wanted to blend in as much as possible. So I tried to, not only did I create orchestra themes, but I tried to make the sound of the orchestra, even the way that it was mixed and EQ'd, as close as to it sounded on the soundtracks, of the original Star Wars films. So once again, the goal is to blend in. The goal was to make it part of, that, and not have anyone notice.
And it was all digital. It wasn't. You didn't like hire an entire ensemble.
Yeah, we didn't have enough of a budget to hire an orchestra for that project, so it was all digital, actually. So I just tried to tweak it as best I could with, expression, to make it as believable as I could for the time period that we were working on. I mean, because even since then, orchestra samples have gotten better. So I had to, do more clever mixing, and add a hall reverb to it that matched what it sounded like on the albums, and that sort of thing. So it was just more detail in the production of it.
And this was Star Wars. What was the name again?
Empire at War.
And which year was that? Empire at War.
Wow, when did that come out? That was 2000 and 2006, maybe.
That's the mid 2000s, yeah. Maybe alongside
mid 2000s. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while. I don't remember exact dates very well. I have to look them up.
That's like in tangent with the Battlefronts. At that time, it was like also the Star Wars, the Battlefronts. It was one of the best video games, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a dream come true project for me. Since then, I've done every other game for Petroglyph. So we did a game that was our own called Universe at War. We did for Sega, and that was a science fiction based game with multiple factions, and very much in the spirit of a CNC kind of a game. Petroglyph kind of took the RTS genre, and ran with it, in terms of as a studio, and that was what we got asked mostly to do. So, most of the games that we've put out are related to that, or are that. what else have we done since? I mean, quite a bit of different games. We have a whole 8-bit armies series of games. There's like a trilogy of those games. There's 8-bit hordes, 8-bit invaders. That was pretty recent. And yeah, it's been it's great working with those guys too, because you know a number of them are from the Westwood era, so it's like we never stopped
Oh,
working together.
so yeah. I mean, so the guys in Petroglyph were like originally in Westwood.
Yeah, yeah, a good portion of them. You know, of course, we have other members of the team that weren't originally from Westwood, but you know, have been part as much a part of our culture at Petroglyph and great contributors to you know what makes that studio chemistry special. So it's a great team of guys to work with, and I just like the culture of it because it's very very much was a continuation sort of where we left off, and it just feels like, you know, it has a good family vibe to it. I love working with everybody there, and because of that too, I mean, that made sense for the remasters when we did them, because you know a lot of those guys, you know, did work on those games, and in fact, Joe Bostic, who's one of the founders partners, he was, you know, he co-designed CNC with Brett Sperry, so you know, even as far back as Dune II, you know, so
Dune II, yeah, that's older than CNC.
yeah, that was the
Yeah.
first RTS game, really.
It is the
Before,
father of RTS games, as much as I know.
yeah, yeah, it really is. You know, it took all of the elements of past strategy games and turned it into a real time event. You know, and made it that that blueprint for what would become RTS after the fact.
Yeah. And
You know, and besides that, you know, like I said before, I do a lot of touring and you know, play with bands. I tour with a band called the Family Stone, which is members of Sly and the Family Stone, which is a classic funk rock group from, you know, the late '60s, and you know, it's one of my all-time favorite bands. So the fact that I got involved playing with them is another dream come true for me. And then I fill in as a drummer for Asia, featuring John Payne and Lou Graham, who is the original singer for Foreigner. So I do select dates with them sometimes. And then, of course, you know, getting off the ground, doing my own shows, you know, so like I did the MagFest show, and we got scheduled to do some others, but then the pandemic hit, so then we had to put that on
all
hold.
the
And
shows, yeah. That's
yeah, that's been the worst part of this, really. So I've just kind of had to, you know, put my energy into some other things. I've always put out my own albums outside of the games. So, you know, since 2002, I think, I've been putting out my own solo albums under my name, and having that sort of spirit of, you know, hybrid rock, electronic, you know, synth.
And I assume these albums are under no record label, right?
They're under my own label.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your own label, yeah, on your own website, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah, and they're on all of the services, all that you can stream it, you know, find all of it on Spotify or YouTube or, you know, iTunes, all of that stuff, Amazon. Um, and yeah, it's just it's another expressive outlet that I have to just do what I feel like doing whenever I get the inclination to come up with stuff that I feel at the time, and
yeah.
then and release that. So there's a lot of it that sounds like it could be CNC related. So a lot of that fan base, you know, likes that stuff, but it gives me an opportunity to explore some other things or hybridize some other styles together that I think are interesting, and see how people react to that too. So
Yeah, I mean that's how I started, you know, making music. I just want to make music and, you know, compile my own albums. And I did music for 2 or 3 games.
mhm.
And it is fun to interpret a game or a movie. And in the future, I think I may could work for a movie. Like I have several friends who are like up and coming movie makers, and I think it'll be fun to make music for games.
Yeah, yeah. I've always enjoyed working on video games because first of all, I was, you know, a video gamer already when I got started. And secondly, I had a head start in that I was already writing my own music as a teenager. Because even though I started with drums, I started learning the other instruments throughout high school, and became interested in recording studios and learning about how all of that works and how to produce. So I kind of had a head start there too. And that's just because I really involved myself in those worlds, and sought out advice, and sought out, just looking over people's shoulders, and say, how do you do that? And how do you get that sound? And how does that work? And what is this microphone for? And, when you ask enough of those questions, then it starts to click, and you start experimenting on your own, trying that stuff out. And so I had demos in hand already when I applied to work in the audio department for Westwood. And fortunately, I had a chance to at least prove myself to see if it would work out. And once I was able to do that, then I got offered the full-time job. So even though my original aspirations as a young person was to be in a band and go tour and sell 1 million albums and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
that was the original dream. But I kind of fell into the video game thing, and it was at the right place at the right time too, because the video game industry was in its infancy at that time. Like,
Yes.
the first game I worked on was for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. So that's how far back we're
Whoa,
going.
really? You're talking the NES, the 1985 NES.
Yeah.
So you had to so it was all like 8-bit, like it's pure noise and square waves, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and limited channels too.
3
Like
tracks, I think.
3 tracks and a white noise channel. That's what I had.
Yes. Oh man.
So that would be like someone coming to you right now and saying, "Okay, write us a whole score with a bass, a flute, a clarinet, and a snare drum. Go." That's what that was like.
Wow, we came a long way.
Yeah. But it gave me the very unique opportunity to grow with that industry, right? So
Yes.
the next things that we worked on were like, the early PC cards that could take 6 voices instead of 3, and then I could work on the Sega Genesis, which was very similar. And then the TurboGrafx, and then and just it kept escalating every couple of years. We worked on new technology, and things kept improving. So by the time we got to streaming audio, which would be, around 95, 94, 95, right around we did Command and Conquer. That was one of the first games to have the streaming audio, but we also did another one on the heels of that, which was The Legend of Kyrandia 3. And the third game of that series, we used also the same technology to have streaming audio. So, and then it just, kept going from there.
Yeah, speaking of Westwood, how were you approached by Westwood at the first place?
Well, I got introduced to the company by being a tester first. So it was like a summer in high school that I was looking for, a part-time job. And my cousin, Lewis Castle, was one of the co-founders of Westwood. So he said, oh, I can see if the test department is looking for, part-time, if you're interested. And I'm like, okay, cool, And I thought, oh yeah, this would be great. I'll just get paid for playing video games.
Whoa, living the dream.
Yeah, but that's not really what it's about. It's more like, okay, yeah, you're going to be playing these games, but it's not, the intent is not for you to play them. The intent is for you to try to break them. So
Yeah.
play them all wrong. Play them every way you can think of that you shouldn't, in order to see if you can break it. What happens if you click this instead of that? What happens if you try to move all the way to the corner of the screen? Just dumb stuff that, why would anybody do this? But you should try it because maybe it'll break something.
Yeah.
So you do that over and over and over again, and you submit bug reports to the programmers, then they fix it or claim they fix it, and then you have to reproduce it again to make sure that it was fixed. And I admittedly was not the best tester because I got distracted, but I was distracted because I was like completely enamored with the process of video game making. It was like being on the behind the scenes of a movie set or something. I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is how games are made. Like, look what the artists are doing. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, how does design work? How do you guys program this stuff? How does this all work? I would ask all these questions and talk to everybody. And so that got me interested in the process of making games. And then eventually that led me to the audio department. And there was, one guy doing everything in the audio department. His name was Paul. And I got to talking to him. and we started talking about music, and told him I was a drummer and all of that stuff, and turns out they had kind of a little Westwood band that they were doing, and so I started jamming with them a little bit, just for fun, and we had a good time with that, and so that at least got a conversation going. And after I graduated high school, I went to him and I said, hey, if there's any way I could be, helpful to you, I'm looking for work now after school. So if I can, intern with you, or, be an assistant or something or whatever, like, I think, what you do is very interesting. So he kind of gave me a few things to try in terms of like programs they were working on that were internal, and see how I would take to them. And then he gave me, like I said, a trial period to kind of prove myself, give me a couple months, how fast can you work, or, what kind of creative stuff can you do? Can you take direction well, all of that kind of stuff. So after that period, I just kind of took to it, like, very motivated. And then that's when I was offered the position. So it was kind of originally being exposed to it and knowing what it was, to then taking a genuine interest in that particular field. So it's kind of two different things that happened there. Like, I could have easily just said, okay, well, yeah, I did that, and I'm going to go do something else now. But it sparked an interest in me that made me want to try to be of use to another department. And through that is how I got really the opportunity. And I'm very thankful and grateful for that.
Yeah, that's like taking advantage of opportunities in a good way. Which can...
Yeah, you need to take initiative to kind of, create your own path. And that just comes from talking to people and figuring out where the opportunity may or may not be, and figure out how to navigate those waters. And the more that you network, or that you show genuine interest, really, at the end of the day, that's what determines, kind of how you move forward.
And now we are here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just glad that I love what I do for a living, and that I've been able to do it this long, that I've made a career out of it. Because to me, that's really the big win in life is, if you can say, I enjoy what I do for a living, because if you go to work and you enjoy what you do, then you don't feel like it's really that much work. You don't feel like this, cloud over your head, like, I got to go to work, like, no, I get to be creative. I get to put my stuff in games. I get to, or write for television or whatever, do my own stuff.
Your hobby is your job, and that's what best can you have when you're...
Yeah, if you can just pay your bills doing that, then you win. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be rich. You don't have, as long as you can make a living doing what you love to do. That's the key.
Wise words from Frank. I think it's safe to end it on a short note here. We passed the 60-minute mark. Do you have any last words?
Other than that, I mean, just to kind of just remind people, I guess, what I'm up to. Like you started off, when we start off talking about my latest album coming out this month, which is April 2021, is Quarantine Sessions, and it's sort of a quote unquote favorites, greatest hits, whatever, of my previous solo albums, but reimagined. So that's available now for pre-order, and it'll be out at the end of the month. And I also started a Patreon page too for the diehard fans who wanted to, see actually what my musical journey is like along the way. So every week I'm actually updating, here's what I accomplished, here's where my head's at, here's what I'm thinking for the future, here's how this stuff's going to roll out, here's who I'm collaborating with, all that kind of stuff. And I've got a whole behind the scenes documentary of every single song of Command and Conquer. Every week I put out a new song that I talk about in depth by itself. So that's another kind of...
That's a gold mine for the fans.
Yeah. So that, I figured that's probably the stuff that's of most interest to people, and that's why that page exists. So if you're curious, take a look at Patreon/Frank Klepacki.
We shall do. I surely will do. Yeah. So everyone check. I will post Frank's Twitter website, and especially his newest album, Quarantine Sessions. And Frank, it's been a great honor to have you on the show. You're like one of my oldest musicians that I looked up to. And I'm 23. I'm not 23, and I've been playing since I was 5 and 6. So
Yeah.
after all these years and having you like in the meeting, it's kind of surreal. So thank you for for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. You know, glad to talk to you, and you know, cool to see that you have your own you know, music career going for you too. So you know, it's nice to see that you know, there's a next generation of people that are really into the same, you know, thing, and with games or with music or with just expressing themselves and caring about, you know, what music production entails, and the composing, you know, different genres and all of that. Like I'm seeing a lot more of that these days than I recall in the past, and it's really endearing because I think it's needed. I think that we need more people your age and up and coming to recognize what goes into this and why you would care or why you would want to pursue having an exceptional skill, something to do with that, whether it's playing an instrument, whether it's composition, whether it's production, or anything in between. You know, put some time in, learn about it, dedicate yourself to it, and take genuine interest and passion in it, because if you do those things, at some point it's going to pay off. You may not realize when or where or how, but just being involved in it and being entrenched in communities of people who share your common interest is enough to springboard that.
Hopefully.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. The pleasure is mine. I will see you another time.
Okay. Thank you.
You too. Goodbye.
Bye.